Hello, YouTube. It is your good friend, TheMovieCuban, back once again. Um, Now that Season 7 is finally ended, and the lull that, that season was causing in terms of my interest in Diablo has now, lifted, I figured it's about time for me to come back and do another, build guide. You know, now that I've had a chance to fool around with some stuff and see how a certain build that I've been trying to make work has been working for me. And today I hit the milestone. Today, for the most part, my build is capable of reaching, at the very least, Torment 13. If you do, if you get the gear that I have, if you run the skills that I'm running, you will very rapidly find that you're going to be able to deal with Torment 13 solo just fine. Though I will say that this is not the best build for group play. So if you're going to be running group games, I would recommend either running at a lower difficulty or maybe running a different setup. Because grouping is not this particular setup's strong suit. But, so let's begin by going over our gear. Because we are going to be running the Spirit of Arachyr set here in this particular build guide. And in order to run it, we are going to need the full 6 set bonus, though I'm sure many of you will notice that I am not wearing the full 6 pieces. But I will explain to you why we're doing that in a bit. So, Arachyr set is simple. The 2 set bonus summons a permanent Spider Queen who leaves behind webs that deal 4,000% weapon damage over 5 seconds and slows enemies. The Spider Queen is commanded to move where you cast your corpse spiders. This 2 set bonus isn't going to be really of that much importance to us, since the Spider Queen is honestly just kind of along for the ride at this point. The 4 set bonus makes it so that your Hex skill gains the effect of the Toad of Hugeness rule, or rune, and after summoning a Toad of Hugeness, you gain 50% damage reduction and heal for 10% of your maximum life per second for 15 seconds. This is going to be helpful not only in terms of just damage mitigation for survival, but the Toad also affects everything but the Rift Guardian. So when you're having particularly troublesome champion packs and whatever, the Toad will eat them for a bit. So if you have those really problematic packs that keep throwing down like effects, it could be somewhat helpful for that. And then finally, the 6 set increases the damage of all of our creature skills by 1,500%. Creature skills are Corpse Spiders, Plague of Toads, Firebats, Locust Swarm, Hex, and Piranhas. This set did used to affect summon zombie dogs, but As you can see from the retooling, they've removed zombie dogs from the list, which is it's all right. I don't feel like it's really going to come as a detriment to our build at all. But okay. So, in order to get the full 6 set of Arachyr going, I am going to recommend that you run the gloves, shoulders, helm, pants, and boots, and then use the Ring of Royal Grandeur so that you can have your chest piece open. You can run the Ring of Royal Grandeur either on your character or in the cube. I would personally recommend running it in the cube, just for the fact of most Rorgs roll pretty shittily, and you wouldn't want that to be reflected in your sheet DPS. So, aside from the 6 bonus for the Arachyr set, I am running the Aquila Cuirass, which I'm sure most of you know. While you're above a certain percent of your primary resource, you gain 50% damage mitigation. This is just to help remedy a little bit of the Arachyr set's innate squishiness. You're going to need the coils of the first spider. These are de facto the Arachyr bracers in every sense of the word. While channeling Firebats, you gain 30% damage reduction, and you can gain up to 80,000 life per hit. I rolled pretty high to the max, so I'm pretty content with that roll. I mean, it could be a little higher, but at this point, it'll be giving me more than enough life per hit that I should be okay. You're going to, you're really going to want a Bakuli Jungle Wraps. This is the Firebat belt that recently got released. It says that Firebats deals between 150 and 200% increased damage to enemies affected by Locust Swarm or Piranhas. And because we're going to be working to try and keep as many things on the screen infected with Locust Swarm pretty much all the time, so your Firebats is pretty much always going to be getting the benefit of this belt. You're also going to need the Staff of Chiroptera. This staff makes the Firebat build because it makes Firebats hit harder because it's attacking twice as fast. It eliminates between 70 and 75% of the mana that you spend, and it has a chance to naturally roll increased Firebat damage. So this is definitely going to be the weapon that you're going to want for this build. You do not want to run it in the cube unless you just really can't live without that other 5% mana. Or if you have a ancient wormwood, then you could run that on your character and then throw this staff, if it's non-ancient, into the cube instead. That's perfectly okay. You're going to want the Ring of Emptiness. Yes, that is right. We are going to take full advantage of the Ring of Emptiness's abilities here. So when you attack an enemy affected with both Haunt and Locust Swarm, you will deal between 250 and 300% extra damage, which is a lot of damage. And all of these damage multipliers from the Ring of Emptiness, from the Bakuli Jungle Wraps, it is going to pair with the Arachyr 6-set bonus and just make you do ungodly amounts of damage. And then finally, I would recommend a Unity if you're running solo. Again, just because of how inherently squishy this particular build is, you're going to want to take steps to mitigate some of that damage that you're going to be taking. And for legendary gems, I am running the Taiguk, since we'll be channeling our bats, and the little bit of extra damage and armor does come in handy when you're fighting really strong enemies. I would recommend the Invigorating Gemstone, since it increases the healing you receive for 5 seconds and stacks up to 10 times. Plus, it makes you immune from control impairing effects, which I have come to see recently is actually a very nice ability to have. And then, of course, we're going to run the Bane of the Trapped to increase damage against enemies under the effects of our control impairing effects. Now, I am running a Hellfire Amulet, as you can see right here, and I'm getting the Confidence Ritual passive off of it. There is another way that you can run this. Instead of opting for a Hellfire Amulet and the Ring of Royal Grandeur in the cube, what you would do is you'd swap the Aquila Cuirass out for the Arachyr chest piece, so you're wearing that full 6 set. And then you would swap out this Hellfire Amulet, and then probably the Ring of Emptiness here that I'm wearing. I'd swap it out for Compass Rose and Traveler's Pledge. And then you'd get the 100% more damage while standing still, and the 50% as you're moving about. The reason I'm not running that setup is actually I was running around with that when I first started trying out this build, and I noticed that you can be on the move a lot, and while the damage boost was nice, I found myself quite often finding myself in situations where I wouldn't even get the standing still bonus stacked up all the way before I was moving again, and that honestly just felt kind of wasteful. So instead I opted for an extra passive, and I chose to run a Ring of Emptiness on my character so that I could put the Ring of Royal Grandeur in the cube and run the Aquila Cuirass here. So it's up to you. If you were to run the Traveler's Pledge and Compass Rose, then the only thing different would be I would probably have the Ring of Emptiness in the cube, so you get the full 300% damage, and then you could either swap this Unity out for the Ring of Royal Grandeur to keep the Aquila Cuirass, or you would just swap the Aquila Cuirass out for the Arachyr chest piece, and then you'd have Unity, Compass Rose, and Traveler's Pledge. Alright. So in the Kanai cube, I am running the Wormwood so that I do not have to worry about casting Locust Swarm. With how mana hungry of a skill Locust Swarm is, I figure it's just better not even to have to bother with that. Um, Call me kind of a lazy guy, but having a skill that I basically don't have to worry about, I find pretty nice. We're running the Mantle of Channeling to give us some extra damage and damage reduction while we're running our bats. Or while we're channeling our bats, rather. And then, of course, the Ring of Royal Grandeur, so we can keep that 6-set bonus and enjoy the Aquila Cuirass's abilities. So for skills, we're going to need Firebats, Plague Bats. This is purely because the setup I'm trying to run is more of a poison-focused setup, and so as much as I would love to run the fire one, since it has greater damage and is more of an AoE effect, I find Plague Bats lets me hit things from just a little further away. So honestly, it's up to what element you're wanting to summon, or to be more specific, it's up to the element that you want to run for the build. If you want to focus on fire, then by all means use Cloud of Bats. But with me using poison and my skills reflecting my poison preference, I'm going to go ahead and use Plague Bats. For Haunt, rather than using Poison Spirit for that extra damage, going against what I just said with the poison setup, we're going to use Lingering Spirit, and there's a reason for that. Because normally if you were to try and cast Haunt and there were no enemies around, the Haunt would just kinda fade away. But with Lingering Spirit, if there are no enemies left, the spirit will linger for up to 10 seconds looking for new enemies. And to just show you what that looks like, when I cast Haunt, as you saw, and there's no opponent, they will just come back to me and circle around me. And then as I'm moving through like a rift and I encounter more enemies, the haunts that are currently sticking to me will go out and find new targets. So I find that really nice, and that's why I'm running Lingering Spirit instead of Poison Spirit. Honestly, the fact that I can just prepare a few haunts before I go into a crowd of enemies more than makes up for the 20% damage buff that I don't get to take advantage of by not using Poison Spirit. We're using Locust Swarm, Cloud of Insects. Because we're running the Wormwood, and because the Wormwood is going to be periodically casting Locust Swarm anyway, we don't really need the Pestilence rune. I mean, otherwise I would definitely choose Pestilence because of how quickly it can spread to enemies. But the Cloud of Insects gives us some reduced damage dealt by enemies, which in the higher difficulty rifts I've noticed is going to be a lot more helpful for amping up your survivability. For the Hex rune, we're using Jinx. Turn your enemies into pigs and make them take 15% additional damage. I'm using Spirit Walk Jaunt just because I like that 3 seconds of being inanimate, especially when I get caught in like elemental affixes and whatever, it's just a little better to have that extra second. If you don't need that extra second, if you're more the kind of person who uses Spirit Walk just as your getaway skill, then by all means run Severance so that you can just have that increased movement speed while in spirit form. I'm running Zombie Dogs Leeching Beasts. Your zombie dogs heal you for 100% of your life on hit with every attack. Um, when your dogs are attacking and you're channeling your Firebats is when this combination actually has a chance to shine. Because my my life per second or my life per hit is usually garbage. As you can see right there, it's only 8,000. But when you start channeling Firebats, see, it leaped up to 86.8 thousand life per hit, which getting that much life back from every hit that one of my dogs does helps keep me sustained just a little bit more. So I do like that. For our passives, aside from the Confidence Ritual passive that is on my Hellfire Amulet, we're running Creeping Death to make Haunt, Locust Swarm, and Piranhas last almost forever. We are using Bad Medicine so that when we deal poison damage to an enemy, it gets 25% damage reduction for 5 seconds. So, just again, another way of us trying to deal with some of that damage that's going to be coming in. I'm using Blood Ritual. This passive makes it so that 20% of your mana costs are paid with your life. And then you regenerate 1% of your max life per second. So not only is this a nice passive because it helps you passively regenerate life, but it also makes it so that rather than just constantly spamming your mana for Firebats, occasionally you use life instead. And since you're constantly regenerating life by using Firebats, you're pretty much eliminating, at least in my mind, 20% of the cost to run your skills. Excuse me. And Blood Ritual helps you keep track of your mana because very rarely, unless I was running like harder content, very rarely did I find that my mana would dip below like the 80% marker, which can still be a problem because you'll lose Aquila Cuirass if it dips too far down. But overall, I think it's a pretty decent setup. And then, if you're not running a Hellfire Amulet like me, instead of Spirit Vessel here, you'd just have Confidence Ritual. But since I have that on my necklace, I figure the auto res skill isn't a bad way to spend this extra slot, especially since I can't really think of anything else that would be better suited to go there. I tried Swampland Attunement, but I just don't really see you needing it because most of the rifts I got, I didn't really come across a lot of mobs, so having a skill that's required for mobs and really dense packs of enemies in order to get the biggest effect out of it. It's kind of a no-go. I considered Pierce the Veil too, but ultimately you'd just be spending too much mana, and that 20% extra damage just isn't worth that. So I would just do Spirit Vessel, Blood Ritual, Bad Medicine, Creeping Death, and then Confidence Ritual, if you're gonna be like me and run a Hellfire Amulet. And then finally, Paragon Points. I maxed out my mana and movement speed, and then just poured everything else into intelligence. For your offense, start with crit hit chance and damage, cooldown reduction, then attack speed. Start with resistances and life, then do armor and life regen. And then for utility, start with area damage, then maybe resource cost reduction, life per hit, and then gold find, since gold find doesn't really matter. At least not to me. Well, okay. So for those of you viewers who don't like to sit and watch gameplay, I'm going to go ahead and warn you that this concludes the build guide portion of the video. For those of you who do like gameplay, I'm now going to go ahead and launch into a Torment 13 Greater Rift, just so you can see how I'm running the build, and so that I can show you that at the very least this build can run Torment 13. So let's get a couple of haunts prepared, summon our dogs, and then our locust swarm hops onto the enemies when they get close enough to us. And then as soon as that Ring of Emptiness proc hits, and you hit him with your Firebats, it's dirty. You deal a lot of damage after that. And the other thing I like about Lingering Spirit is, as soon as you kill an enemy, the spirits will seek out your next enemy. So as soon as you get close to them, and Wormwood throws Locust Swarm on them, then you're automatically proccing Ring of Emptiness's bonus. So that's nice. I do like the way that syncs up right now. I am a little bit worried that Blizzard might nerf the Ring of Emptiness for Arachyr the way that they did for Helltooth Garg, but we'll keep our fingers crossed and hope that they don't. So shh, nobody tell Blizzard that the Ring of Emptiness works really well with Arachyr, or else they might take it away from us. And that would really make me sad, since I'm actually having a lot of fun playing the Arachyr set again, because for the longest time it was basically play Arachyr to do the chicken farming build, or don't play Arachyr. And that was just kind of sad, because I remember when Arachyr was first released, I was actually really interested in the kind of play style that could have been opened up by it. And I remember being very disappointed when it started getting surpassed by the other builds, when they would just keep buffing the other sets and then do nothing for Arachyr. So now that Arachyr is actually like viable again, it's pretty nice. Now I'm not sure if the fire skill for plague bats would be doing more right now, but I will gladly take the slight damage difference in exchange for the greater survivability, because we've got our bad medicine going. So everything that we hit with our plague bats is gonna hit us a little softer than they normally would, which is gonna be really nice because even in Torment 13, things can hit quite hard. And when you're playing a squishy class like Witch Doctor, and you're not really relying on pets to tank any of that damage, you will find yourself getting one shot quite a bit if you're not careful enough. And even sometimes when you're being as careful as you possibly can, you'll get killed. It's unavoidable. I've seen it even with like the best players. You really can't avoid death forever. You can try, but eventually something is gonna pop up and kill you. That's just, unfortunately, the nature of the game. Because if you couldn't die, then what fun would it be, right? What fun would it be if you had no worries and you just walked through Diablo every day like, yep, I'm not gonna die today, so cool. Oh man, I need some more elites. This is taking a lot longer than I thought it would. Gotta make sure Haunt and Locust Swarm are still spread on your enemies, because you won't start doing the really good damage until you get that Ring of Emptiness proc, so don't forget about that. If you feel like there's some things that aren't getting hit by it, then maybe just cast out a Locust Swarm of your own, maybe a couple Haunts, and then you can just get right back to throwing bats at everybody. Because we all know that's what we really want to do. We really just want to throw bats. Unfortunately, at least from what I've seen, without the Ring of Emptiness buff for this build, it's just kind of meh. Like, it'll do T10, no problem, even without the Ring of Emptiness, but I just kind of like the I just kind of like how involved the build gets when you actually have to occasionally apply the extra effects. Because Diablo has plenty of builds where it's just, you push a couple skills every now and then basically push one button for victory. I remember I remember Wrath of the Wastes had that problem where you would just hit all your buffs and then you'd whirlwind to victory. Which, yeah, that's okay for a lazier play style, and I have nothing against it. But it just wasn't the most terribly engaging method of play when you're just like, alright, buff, 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 spin to win. So, yeah, nothing against it, not a fan. Just more a fan of the Firebats right now. Because there have been so many different builds popping up lately with people just trying out Firebats and seeing where they can go with it. And I've seen some really interesting setups, and I've seen some setups that honestly make me want to pull my hair out or shake the person who came up with it and be like, why would you do this? But yeah, Arachyr Firebats has become pretty fun again, and I can see myself fooling around with this build for a little while more until a different build draws my attention. So there you go, guys. That's my build guide for the Arachyr set. Thank you for watching my video. If you liked what you saw and would like me to continue making videos, then please go ahead and like the video below, because as you should all already know, your support is greatly appreciated. So, thanks for joining me again here at TheMovieCuban, and I will see you guys next time.